Are more hotly debated in the Bigfoot community than the pro-kill versus no-kill topic. It is a subject that brings out the emotions in people, and things can get heated really quick. Hi, I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and welcome to Just Energy. Just Energy is brought to you by SoulHealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer. In this episode, I will be speaking with Don McDonald, a member of the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization. GCBRO's sole focus is to shoot a Bigfoot in order to prove to the world that Bigfoot really does exist. Don and the members of GCBRO are a group of real Bigfoot researchers who have been at it for 20 years. Over the years, they've collected numerous eyewitness testimonies and explored real case studies. Their goal is to help people terrified by Bigfoot attacks on their homes, pets, and farm animals. Don McDonald, spent 9 years in the Army National Guard as a helicopter mechanic, but also trained and became proficient in all aspects of combat, hand-to-hand, and weapons training. He had a Bigfoot encounter as a 12-year-old boy, and he and a young hunting buddy were out in the woods. The encounter has driven Don to find the creature over the last 13 years of Bigfoot research. His webpage and the webpage of his group, GCBRO, is killingbigfoot.com. So please welcome Don McDonald. Hey Don, how's it going?
It's going great, Rita.
Well, nice to have you on the show. You know, we've talked about Bigfoot on the show before, but you're part of a show. Is it a new show that's coming back on, or a new show that's coming back on? That doesn't even make any sense. A new show or a show that's coming back on, Killing Bigfoot?
We filmed the pilot, and it came out in 2014 in October. And in the meantime, we went through negotiations, and we got a 6-show season, which will start February the 4th on Destination America.
Which is going to be next week.
Next Saturday night, the night before the Super Bowl, and everybody will be home getting all their Super Bowl food ready, prepping the night before, so they're going to be home.
That's right, so they can like munch on their nachos and chicken wings and watch Killing Bigfoot.
That's exactly what I'm going to be doing.
Well, cool beans. So how did you get started hunting Bigfoot? You know, how do you say plural Bigfoot?
I guess big feet.
But how did you get started hunting Bigfoot in the first place?
Back in the mid-'70s, when I was 12 or 13 years old. Yeah, I'm giving my age away. Me and a friend of mine, I would go out to his house, and we would spend the night out there. We would go camping and things like that. We were both in the Boy Scouts, and he had this big German Shepherd. And we were going up the hill, and the German Shepherd took off up the hill. And then about 10 seconds later, it came back between us and ran between us with his tail tucked between his legs. And it was giving out, it was scared to death. We went to the top of the hill, and there was about a 150-pound hog laying there still quivering. Its back legs were snapped. And we got to looking, and it was a pine tree about this big around, and about 6 or 7 feet off the ground, we saw what appeared to be a limb with some blood dripping off of it. We thought, man, I guess it threw it into that, but it turned out that limb was actually a bone. Something had picked that hog up, 150 pounds.
And took it
home? We were Boy Scouts. We wasn't scared of nothing. Something had picked that hog up, slammed into the tree so hard it broke a rib off.
Wow.
And we got curious, and we saw where the leaves had been scuffled. We followed it down to the creek bottom, and that's where we found about a 14-inch human-looking track, but it was too wide, and there was no arch heel in it. So we weren't sure what it was, and then it just dawned on us. It had to be one of these things.
So did you bring anybody out there to come check out what you guys found, or did you just, chalk it up to, wow, that was just really weird?
Just chalked it up to really weird. Back in those days, there was no internet, no way of getting a hold of anybody, so we just looked at it and thought that was something cool. Then, then back in the mid '90s when the internet came out, that kind of got me back into things in the mid '90s. I did a lot of what we call armchair research, where you sit behind a computer and do research there for several years, and then I found the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization 8 or 10 years later. I guess in 90. Let's see, might have been 2005, 2006 when I found them and joined them. And
So
great
talk
bunch of guys.
talk a little bit about the group. What kind of do you bring to the table as far as experience and knowledge in hunting Bigfoot?
We all of us are have lifelong woodsmen. Our whole lives we've hunted and everything else. Most of us I spent 9 years in the Army National Guard. I was a helicopter mechanic, but I was in the military. Most of our guys have a military background, but I said every one of us has hunted. And I'm a licensed land surveyor, so I know a lot about maps, how to draw and read topography maps, aerial photos. I have access to a lot of things that other people don't have access to, being in the field I'm in.
That's cool. So, yeah, I mean, that's something that I've heard from people that are hunters is that actually a friend of mine and I were talking about this the other day that he heard some weird, lifelong hunter,
Hmm.
and was somewhere and just heard this really weird howl out
And
in the woods.
they make a lot of weird sounds, but the one thing that we always do, and I do this all the time to refresh myself, I'll go through and foxes make weird sounds, coyotes make weird sounds, bobcats. I'll go get on the internet and I'll type in uh, fox sounds, and I'll watch a bunch of YouTube videos and listen to audio of the different sounds foxes make. When I go to an area, I know what natural animals are in that area, and by listening to sounds, I know what I can eliminate when I hear a sound. And
Hmm.
that's what you have to do. You have to eliminate everything it possibly could be before you say this might be a Bigfoot.
Hmm. But that's just really good methodology from someone that's, coming to the topic in a credible, researchy kind of way.
Yeah, I mean that's part of it. You have to eliminate everything it could be before you say it might be. And if you didn't see it make that sound, or you didn't see it do this or that, you can't say that is definitive proof.
Hmm. So what do you think Bigfoot is?
Well, based on some DNA testing that was done on a blood sample, actually I know of two or three, and they all came back the same. It came back as unknown primate because it did not have a body to match it to, but it was along the lines of the orangutan and the bobono and the gorilla.
Okay, so I've heard that there have been hair samples captured or caught, and they were trying to do DNA evidence. Melba, well, I can't think
Yes,
of her last name, but anyway, we
yes,
won't talk about her.
yeah.
But I've never heard that there was actually blood evidence
Yeah, in
obtained.
2003, the group I'm with, the Gulf Coast Bigfoot Research Organization, we staged hunts back then, and we still do, but it's for a little different reason. Back then, it was for proof of species, and they had staked a deer carcass out, and one of our snipers actually shot one of these creatures and shot it right through the back, in the front, and we found. Well, I wasn't with them then. I came in a couple years later. They had mucus material, blood samples, and all kind of stuff where this thing was shot. And they got the samples and they turned them into different labs. And some of the labs they just didn't really want to fool with it, but the one lab did, and it came back as unknown primate. They said no body to match it to. They had the sample of one of these things.
But see, that's interesting, because I've interviewed a lot of Bigfoot people and I know a lot of cryptozoologists in the
Mhm.
Texas area, and I've never heard that there was biological material obtained ever.
They don't want to talk about it. Uh, a lot of people look at us as stone cold killers because we believe in killing a Bigfoot for proof of species. Now we have evolved into, we could have killed one several years ago, actually more than once. But we always wanted a big male. We would not kill a female. We would not kill a juvenile. Now, where we're at now is people that are being harassed by these creatures at night. Farm animals lost, which is loss of income and food in their mouths. Do you have a dog or a cat?
I do. It would just be an appetizer, though.
Yeah, but if a coyote come up and killed your dog or cat that was part of your family, you'd want to do something about that animal. These things are animals; they're not anything to do with humans,
So
and
you
that's one
think that
group
they're actually carnivores and not
that just
herbivores?
just like us, they'll eat anything. We know of, and people have seen them doing this, hiding in a bush, and the other ones, Bigfoot would come through and run the deer towards these other ones. They reach out, grab it, break its leg, reach up, snap its neck, and walk off with it. They eat rabbits, squirrels, it doesn't matter.
And deer.
And deer. And the one thing, there's so much down here in the South. You have huckleberries, you have blueberries, you have plums, all kinds of different vegetation they can eat. They're just like us. They'll eat whatever it takes. And they have the same nutritional values and needs that we need.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Wow, that's really cool. And again, kind of like with the biological evidence, you don't really hear stories about them hurting, livestock or hurting dogs or cats or anything like that. I mean, how common occurrence is that?
Pretty common. We've got, like I said, we talk to people every single day of the week. I've talked to 3 different people yesterday, not to mention all our guys in the group. I talked to 3 different witnesses yesterday. A lot of what we get is a lady in South Mississippi. They had a bunch of geese. You got to be pretty sneaky to sneak up on a goose and catch it. Well, she lost all of her geese. She has lost 2 dogs, a little bit of everything down that way.
And she can't rule out, or you guys can't rule out, that it's some other bobcat, coyote, raccoon doing that?
I've been on an investigation down there, and I heard screams and hollers associated with these creatures. I found the twisted limbs 8 or 9 feet off the ground. People will find where limbs were just snapped. A lot of things could have done that. Another limb could have fell on that. But if you've got a green limb that's pushed over and it's twisted around, what could reach up 10 feet off the ground without a ladder to do that?
You're very interesting. This is very interesting.
Thank you. I've been doing this quite a while. I just got back from South Alabama on a research trip. I spoke at a festival down there, actually Saturday the 14th of February. And I got there, Friday the 13th I get there. I was like, oh, great, it's Friday the 13th. So we go on site to meet this gentleman on his property, and we found claw marks in the tree. Now, if a cougar or a bear were to leave claw marks from about 9 feet to about 12 feet off the ground, you would find where they had reached up and grabbed the tree, pulled up, and more claw marks go up to that point. We did not find any. There was nothing until about 8 or 9 feet off the ground for 3 or 4 feet where the claw marks started.
So are these creatures like other primates, that they actually climb trees? They're not ground-dwelling animals, per se?
The small ones will, from all the stories I've gotten. I've never seen them, but the small ones will. The big ones, I don't see a 10-foot tall, 750 to 800-pound animal climbing a tree.
Just saying, I'm a city girl, sorry. We don't know stuff like that.
But it's almost impossible, put it that way.
Okay.
I'm sure they might get on some bigger limbs that are low lying and climb up to get a better view where they can hide behind the tree and peek out. But as far as actually climbing 20, 30 foot off the ground, the big ones they don't have the anatomy to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. All right, really weird question. Do they have opposable thumbs?
Yes. There's no doubt about that. We've had sticks, rocks, and everything else. I'm sure in Europe over the years you have heard about people having rocks thrown at them and sticks thrown at them by these Bigfoot type creatures. What does it take to be able to pick a rock up and throw it? A thumb. It looked kind of funny doing this without a thumb. You have to be able to grab that to throw it.
Okay. So you're going and investigating in the, I have to think about this, southeastern part of the United States. But there are reports of Bigfoot or Big Feet or whatever, stories that you hear from around the world. So do you think that there is just one species of Bigfoot that is in different areas of the world, or do you think that there are potentially multiple species of Bigfoot?
I think there's subspecies, personally.
Well, now, okay.
You got to think, whenever these things started evolving, which could be Gigantopithecus, which came across the land bridge and came down, you go to different areas and you're going to evolve based on your surroundings and your environment. Down here in the South, what we find are more slender animals, more athletic animals, and not big bulky things like you saw in the Patterson Gimlin film. Those out in the Pacific Northwest, they have to deal with a lot more cold. Therefore, their body is going to be bulkier to deal with all that super cold weather. Here, they'll get on all fours and scoot. And their hands and feet on the ground, and they're running.
Because it's kind of ape-like.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. And so you're okay. So subspecies. All right, I'm thinking now. Thinking.
That's the only thing I can come up with because we've got like you said, these things are reported all over the world. And you've got some up in the mountains. It's got to be a little bulkier. Down here where it's hot, they don't need to be bulky. They need to be muscular so they can chase down deer, rabbits, and other creatures like that.
So in this area, how big of a range is there for them, or do they travel through?
We've kind of, I've got all my reports, or most of my reports, that I deem this is a Bigfoot pinned on my Google Earth. And in several areas, I've got pockets of these things. And it appears to be about a 10 or 12 mile radius that they'll just kind of meander around in. Then they're going to follow the food. Plain and simple, they're going to follow the food. But 10 to 12 miles is probably the range for a certain clan of these things, or whatever you want to call it, a family pod.
That's really not that much area. I figured it would be, vast amount of space, but 10 to 12 miles isn't really all that big.
When you get down in here and you get down to some of these hills and hollows and the swamps, 10 or 12 miles is a pretty good sized area.
Like you don't want to walk through it.
No, I've got 50 acres up in the area, and I'm tired after walking the 50 acres. You walk, 10 square miles, you're looking at 640,000 acres. That's a lot of land.
Yeah. Do you think that the sightings are increasing? And do you think they're increasing because of incursion by human populations into what was wilderness areas?
I believe so. You've got more people moving out into the country. They're trying to get away from the cities. But the big thing is the timber cutting. Right now, especially down here, where we start getting a lot of activity and screaming and hollering, people give me reports. I check into the areas, and one of the first things I find is where somebody's come in and cut 200 acres of timber here, or 40 here, 40 here, and 40 here, and to be honest, it's pissed the monsters off.
Well, and I would think that it would also impinge on their food sources. If they were eating nuts and berries, and what other animals were actually in the forest area. And now they're having to find other food sources that they would come and get your dog.
Yeah, and they'll follow the food. When you if you cut 200 acres of land, you're not going to have the deer, you're not going to have the rabbits, the quail, anything else in that area. Their prey and their food source has to move on to another area, so they're going to follow that. And if it just so happens to be an easy meal of a dog that likes to yap, so be it.
I have a dog down the street they can have. I'm offering him up to the Bigfoot gods.
Well, if he barks, he will most likely die. We have a lot of people that have these creatures around their house, and what we found is the dogs that don't bark live to see another day. But if these creatures are coming up and that dog starts barking and won't shut up, that's when the dog comes up dead and missing. The dog is giving its position away that it's coming up.
That makes sense. Do they come and steal people's garbage? I'm thinking like Yogi the Bear.
Yeah.
But do they come and steal garbage?
Sure they do. Now, not necessarily at people's houses, but I have several reports of creatures that have been seen digging through garbage dumpsters. I went to a place in Oklahoma going up to see Michael Humphreys, who's one of our GCBRO team members. And the place had a big sign that said Bigfoot Brew. And I was asking him, why do they call it Bigfoot Brew? Just for the legend? He said, no, Donald. What happened is the owner went out back one day and there was a Bigfoot digging through the garbage dumpster for some of the scraps. It's easy food.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially if they're coming into more urban populations where, they weren't before, which would also, identify why there's more sightings? Because it sounds like the number of sightings is increasing.
There's not many days that go by that I don't get a new report. I get 2 to 3 every week. When I went down to Alabama, it's a place called Evergreen, Alabama, in Conecuh County. I went down to speak at the festival, and I had 18 reports plotted on my Google Earth that I had gotten through various sources, mainly our GCBRO website, which has a report section that you can submit your report. So I plot all that on my Google Earth, carry it with me, plot a topo map, carry it with me, and before I left, after talking with people, I had over 40 reports just in one county.
Wow.
And it's just amazing. Now, this is not stuff from 25 years ago. Everything was within the last 4 or 5 years, and most of it was within the last 2 to 3 years. Kids getting being in a deer stand, and the thing starts shaking the deer stand, and the little kid who's about 12 or 13 years old looks out the window up to see what's shaking. He thought maybe has my uncle messing with me, and the thing was 8 to 9 feet tall. The kid jumped out of the little box stand on the ground. The kid jumps by out of the stand. He runs right by his four-wheeler, which is parked right there, and he runs a quarter mile to his uncle. He didn't even take time to get on his four-wheeler and go. He ran.
Had some adrenaline pumping, I guess.
I don't blame him. These things are not the forest friends a lot of people think they are. Most of them just want to be left alone. They don't want people coming out looking for them either. But there are a few, like any other animal. You've got dogs that are just plain mean. You've got humans that are plain mean. A lot of animals just plain mean. And we think, based on finding 3-toed tracks, that is due to inbreeding. When you start getting a lot of inbreeding, you start having loss of digits and a little off up here. And
little dueling banjos music playing in the background.
Pretty much. But those are the ones that are causing the problems. When we find those 3-toed tracks, that's where we have problems. Now, 99.999% of what we do is regular research. People call us with reports. We go help these people understand what has happened to them. We go meet them on site. We talk to them. We go look at their woods. We reassure them that everything's going to be okay. And that's most of our research. But every once in a while, we get that report where something is coming up, beating onto the side of the house. It's terrorizing the family. We know members of families that have just gone into the fetal position. It's totally messed them up, and they have to have, go to the shrink.
I'm sure that goes over real well. Yeah, I had a Bigfoot come to my house and bang on, and now I'm traumatized.
It is what it is.
Well, I know that, but that's like saying I was abducted by a UFO. I mean, it's right up there in that woo, okay, territory. I mean, but it would work for me, but
Yeah, I know, but that's where we come in. They have no other place to turn. But they can get a hold of us, and we can at least tell them how they can keep these creatures back from their houses. We can give them preventative steps to avoid that kind of confrontation again. And if worse comes to worse, we call the hunt team in. And even if we don't shoot at one or shoot one, us being in the woods with those animals and they know we're hunting them, it usually backs them off for a while.
Huh. So have any people been hurt?
I've got 3 just here in Mississippi that I've personally talked to that have been attacked.
So what did I'm curious. So what did they have to say? Could you share one of their stories? Would that be okay?
Yeah. One of them's in the show, so you get to see it. I'm in Destination America, February 4th.
Okay. All right. So don't tell that one. Tell a different one.
I can't tell that one.
Yeah, well, tell that one.
I was talking to a gentleman. He was deer hunting, and it was an old probably a 20-year-old cutover. It had grown up pretty good, but they had these cut lanes down through there where they had hauled the logs out with. And there was a side channel to get the water to weep away from it. He had carried his lawn chair, and he sat down that little cut right there where he could see both ways with his gun. He hears something coming through the woods. That sounds like somebody. So he drops his gun, he looks, and he sees about an 8-foot-tall, dark-colored creature. Walking bipedally, he said, at first I thought it might have been somebody in a fur coat. Then I got to looking. There was no way it was somebody in a fur coat. So he starts kind of easing his gun up. He hears a stick crack beside him. He turns his head, looks. It grabbed him right here. The other one did. Threw him about 20 feet into a tree. He doesn't remember anything until the next day when his wife finally came down in the woods and found him, because it was after dark before she went down there to try to find him. He was still knocked out. He had a fractured skull, broken collarbone, dislocated shoulder, 2 or 3 broken ribs, and what was it? Something else was on the inside. I cannot remember exactly what else was ruptured on the inside. But he stayed in the hospital for about a month.
Wow, that's pretty serious.
It was good. He still has nightmares about that.
Mm-hmm.
I would too.
I bet. So as anybody that is in an area that is pretty active and, has courage, have they ever tried to like put food out, put the dog out there as a lure to try to get a Bigfoot to come into the open so that they could get footage?
The worst thing you can do is feed these things, because what that's going to do is that's going to get them used to you coming in there. And I actually have a story I can tell you that a friend of mine, he didn't know better. It's about a half-mile road that he would walk down, and he would carry this lunchbox. Well, it was just an igloo cooler. He would carry it down there. He would open it up, and he would put fruit and things out for them. He would close it up, carry it back with him. Well, he went down there one time, did not carry the offering to them. He didn't think he was going to make it out of the woods alive. They started tearing the woods up around him, throwing rocks, throwing the green hard pine cones at him, throwing sticks at him, and screaming and hollering, and trailed him all the way out of the woods. He didn't have a gun with him, and he was scared to death. He was not going to make it out alive. He called me as soon as he got in the car and was freaking out. So I told you not to do that. He said, I know. But something like that will get these things coming to your house, and if you don't feed them, they might be in a bad mood, have a bad hair day, and they might decide to do something that you don't want them to do.
Okay, so what about like somewhere in the middle of the woods? I mean, have you guys, your team, try to, they do it with deer. They put the little, corn stuff out there and try to lure the deer in.
I got 2 corn feeders in my place. We don't do that though. All of ours, what we do is military style hunting. We have ghillie suits. We go to hides, climbing deer stands, things like that. And we only go to areas that we know these creatures are in. We don't just go out in the woods and do things. We are predetermined on exactly what we're going to do and the scope of what we're going to do and handle it.
But I'm going to guess, since you have these, high-powered shooting people as part of your team, that they haven't been all that successful because you haven't caught one.
These things are very smart. Most times they're actually watching you as you go to your stands. People wonder why they don't get them on trail cameras. Well, most of your trail cameras are set by an infrared beam that triggers the camera to take the picture. We believe they can see in an infrared spectrum. Your dogs can see in it. So why can't these things? And that would explain a lot. But another thing that makes sense, they're probably watching you when you put the camera out, and it's something that's not natural. They know you're putting it out there for a reason, so they're going to avoid it. We've even put cameras facing each other and everything else.
Nothing.
Well, there are a few very interesting pictures, I will say that.
But it seems like, and this isn't to anybody taking the pictures, they always are blurry or out of focus or something weird. It's just really kind of frustrating.
It is, but most of the pictures you see people put out, they're not sure what they are, and they're fishing for somebody to tell them it's a Bigfoot. Most of them are not these creatures. They're something else. A pareidolia, you zoom in on something, and, oh, I see a shape. Well, it's not. It's not one of these creatures.
That's Don McDonald. His webpage is killingbigfoot.com. And thank you for watching this portion of our interview with Don. If you're enjoying today's program, please click on the button below and subscribe to our channel. If you want to hear this interview in its entirety, become a Just Energy Radio insider at justenergyradio.com and access full shows commercial-free and gain access to our over 10 years of show archives. Don't forget to share this episode with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So until next time, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. This is Just Energy. Be blessed.